Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to the Adobe Live Illustration Masterclass with me, your host, Kyle Webster. I'm glad to be here and glad to see everybody joining me here in the chat. Remember, I'm watching the chat over on Behance, so if you're watching on YouTube or Twitter, then the show is going live, and you can see me, but I can't see you. So if you head on over to be.net/Adobe Live, then I will be able to chat with all of you. If you have questions about anything, you can just throw them right there in the chat, and that will make it easier for us to have a little conversation during this live stream, okay? Today's topic, what are we talking about? We are talking about drawing faces in comics. I thought, this would just be maybe a first in a series, but I wanted to cover a few of the basic things to keep in mind when you are trying to draw faces for your own personal comic book work, and ways to hopefully get a little bit more systematic about it, and ways to stick with a style and stay on model, and simplify things to where you can draw the same face repeatedly at different angles and not drive yourself crazy. Okay, so anybody out there who's tried to do comic illustration knows that this can be a tricky thing to do. Yeah, it's tricky for everybody, myself included. And I just thought, hey, why not look at this as a topic for everybody today and try and make it a bit easier for everyone. Okay, so quick hello to Wade and Steve, and I see Carla and Hussam and Francois. Is this suitable for beginners, says Francois? Yes, I think it is, absolutely. And who else is here? Bruce, what's up? And Mercurial, hello, hello. And Viola and Umicorn and Laura and more folks joining in as we get started. So why don't we just get going? I'm going to share my screen here. I'm in Photoshop today. And what I've done here is I've just drawn a couple of basic heads. Of course, this character right here has a whole body, but she's really tiny. What I was trying to do was see if I could draw different faces, all right, stylistically different, and also having very different facial features, but with very few lines. Try and keep it minimal, all right? Because with comics, you're having to repeat and repeat and repeat panel after panel, and the reader has to be able to easily identify who the character is that you're drawing, especially in a cast of characters. Now, there are lots of people who do this brilliantly well, but I thought I'd start with just two very basic examples. Of course, I could pull many, many more, but I want to get to the drawing. So I was going to start with Alex Toth, okay? And I've heard it pronounced Toth. I've heard it pronounced Toth. I don't know which one it is, but I say Toth. This is a Space Ghost character here, and it's called Head Turns. You notice that. Now, this is an important exercise for any artist to do once they've come up with a character. You'll notice that what Alex is trying to do is have this character presented in a bunch of different angles and have us, the reader, still be able to quickly identify who she is, okay? That is the goal here. Now, I'll be obviously Alex Toth, very, very talented, skilled draftsperson, one of the best that ever lived. So to try and achieve something like this right out of the gate is going to be tricky. But it's the kind of thing you want to aspire to be doing with your own characters if you are going to start doing comics work, which is to be able to present them in different angles and have them make sense, have them read. So this is said. I said it said head turns, but a lot of people say turnaround. If you work in animation, you know about turnarounds, character turnarounds, where you present your character in different angles. So what I thought we'd do is try that in a minute. All right. But first, I want to also show you, this is a very, very good example of a well-known and beloved comic character that has been simplified down to just a few very simple lines and shapes. This is, of course, TinTin from Georges Remy, also known as Hergé. Now, this angle right here is one that's presented often in the comics. And a lot of times what artists will do is they'll come up with sort of some stock poses for the character where they can pretty much get away with having the head angle of the character be one of, say, 4, 5, or 6 different poses, and they can work it into the story so that it's enough to add variety, but they already have those few poses set in their minds. They have a formula system for drawing them, and they're good to go. Let's take a look at a different angle here. Okay, whoops, there we go. Here we have a different angle for our friend TinTin. And you'll notice that if I were to take this and just shrink it down like so, and line it up with the other head, we should be able to do kind of our own little turnaround exercise here by lining up the eyes there, and the nose, oops, there we go, and the mouth, you know, so that the proportions stay the same for the character all the way through, right? Line for the eyebrows. Different angle of the head, but really it's very much the same shape. The hair gets pushed forward a little bit to the right because we're going to that 3/4 view, and here it's pushed back a little because we have that profile view, but it's the same shape there. And if we look at this example here, I'll zoom in on this, you'll see that what we have is a top-down view. All right, this is a rare thing you'll see in the comic where he tries a different camera angle altogether that requires like this idea that we're looking at the character in a more extreme perspective. So we're looking top down, sort of a bird's eye view. So we still recognize the character easily, but we're seeing more of the top of the cranium here. This is the kind of thing that Airzy would have to work out and say, how much of that do I want to show? How much do I want to change the head shape from the standard kind of egg that we have for TinTin here to make it work from this angle and still have the character be recognizable? What about the placement of the nose, right? And changing that slightly. This is all, you know, a challenging thing, but he's worked it out very nicely. And then here we have one where we're looking at TinTin from 3/4 view from behind the head, more or less. Okay, so you don't see the eyes at all. You don't see the mouth at all. You don't see the eyebrows. But because this general silhouette is so recognizable, right? We very, very quickly can say, oh, that's TinTin. We don't even have to think about it. Okay, TinTin if you're going to pronounce it correctly. See what I mean? So that's the kind of exercise that artists will go through when drawing heads and drawing faces for comics, where they're going to have to learn that language for themselves and then be able to repeat it. It's like a vocabulary that they build up, be able to repeat it on demand very quickly in a whole bunch of panels and carry it all the way through either a series of strips or whatever, or a graphic novel or whatever it happens to be. Okay. So let us take a look then at this. So I thought, okay, I'm going to come up with this character here, and we'll go through the exercises here of drawing this guy. So the basic idea was I wanted to have this head shape that is more or less that. Okay, so it's kind of a little flatter on top and then rounded towards the bottom. And I wanted to place the eyes pretty high. Okay, so this is a helpful exercise for you to do. Get your head shape and then decide, do you want the eye line to be center, high, low? Okay, that's going to make a big difference. I immediately try and sort of center that off vertically and horizontally. And then decide, do I want the eyes to be spaced wide apart? Yes is the answer to this. I'm going to give them sort of oval shape for the eyes and get the pupils right there in the middle, rather the irises. The eyebrows I wanted to come up and then down slightly towards the middle. Okay, get the nose up right under the eye line, and then you can see how low that mouth is, right? Get that mouth really, really low. And that is the general idea for proportions of the features of the face, okay? Where I want to do the placement for the features of that face. And then for the hair, the general idea is come out, okay? And then follow the curve of the head down this way and cut that off. And then out again, and then this way, okay? And then we come over the face, the forehead there. And you can see the ears are really just kind of like semicircles. They're down here just under the nose, okay? And to keep things simple, it's just a little line like that. And then you have the neck. That is a general design of this character, right? And then I just went ahead and I drew on top of these sketches a front view and then a profile and a 3/4 view, okay? And you'll notice that I gave myself guidelines like we just did with looking at TinTin, some guidelines there. And there's one little thing I decided to add from the 3/4 view and the profile as a sort of just an extra little trait, a character trait, if you will, for this guy. And I'm going to just jump over to the brush I was using for this. It was the it was in the fall 2021 Brit pen. Here we go. Fall 2021 update for all of you Photoshop and Fresco subscribers out there. The Brit pen in the fall 2021 update. Looks a little something like that. This right here, this little line just for the base of the head there where the hair ends. I wanted that to be something that I could use. See from this, then I tried an angle looking from the top down. Okay, if we're gonna show that more accurately, that's kind of our angle right there. And it helps, I think, just to identify him. It's a little sort of identifiable trait there. So you only see it from 3/4 and side view, but I like that little accent. So that was the exercise. I thought we'd do that again and start from scratch. But before we do, I want to talk about language, the language that you use for comics. So drawing eyes, for example, there are easily over a dozen ways to quickly draw eyes in comics. Ways that can be expressive, which is of course important for facial expressions and everything else. But also ways that will differentiate characters from one another or help you to sort of define a style for the work in which you are working, right? So let's take a quick gander at some ideas there, okay? So eyes can be anything as simple as a pair of dots. All right, now all you have to do is add eyebrows to them, right? And you can immediately get all kinds of different facial expressions. Now you see this in TinTin, it's a great example, how to make this work. But just a pair of dots is all you need. How close the dots are to one another can be something that you use to determine differentiate one character from another. So I could have, for example, this arrangement of features for one character, okay? And for another character, I could have this arrangement of features. So you see, all I'm doing is I'm moving eyes closer or farther away from one another, moving the base of the nose up or down, right? The mouth hasn't changed, but just those two simple moves make these different characters, all right? And all we're doing right now is using dots for those eyes. So I could do this and do that, and now we have two different characters in our story, right? Simple as that. You know, if you want to now add some details, just erase this away. There's one character. There's another character. Both of these are based on the same basic head shape, right? Just add the cap for that one character. Character looks younger, right? Eyes are spaced apart differently. Line of the nose drops. We add some facial hair to this guy. We change the shape of the ears. And this could be a language that I could use going forward to create a comic, a full comic. I could do a whole cast of characters like this just by shifting these relationships, right? Up, down, left, right, further apart, closer together, etc. And I haven't even played with the head shape, But of course, changing the head shape makes all the difference as well. You could easily add more characters that way. So just to give you an example of something really, really simple, we're starting out really simple. That would be enough for me to create a language that works. You know, I could also do this. So now we have these 3 lines here, 3 lines here, 3 lines there. That takes care of this character's hair. We haven't done any turnarounds for these people yet, but it'd be easy to figure that out. Okay, we can look at that in a minute. I want to answer some questions I'm seeing here in the chat, so let's make sure that we do that. Let's see. Question is, here we have one from Oscar. Can we have the brush set download link? Oh, yeah, thank you. Wade has taken care of that. There's a link right there to get all the brushes since we log in with your Adobe credentials. If you're in Photoshop, you come to the brushes panel, and this little link right here, if you go to this top right-hand corner here, there's a little drop-down menu, and you go to Get More Brushes. And when you tap on that, it'll take you to the sign-in page. Okay? All right, so I was talking about eyes, and I want to carry on with that for just a minute. Let's take those dots, okay, and let's just do this. Right there, you have a different facial expression. The eyes look like they're wide open. And if you raise the eyebrows when you do that, right? Now we have a different facial expression right there. But they're still just dots, right? So adding some lines top and bottom. All right. What about actually drawing a circle for the eyes? You can do that. Make it more sort of like an oval. Speaking of ovals, those are eyes, right? We're talking about comics here, so you can do whatever you want. You can even do rectangular shapes for the eyes if you want. You can do longer shapes, and you can even stretch the irises. That's a funny look that you see a lot in comics, right? What else can you do? Well, let's check it out. You can do things like this. That starts to look a bit more realistic, right? And you put a few lines underneath like that. There's some eyes. How about just lines? If somebody's laughing, right? And eyelids are closing a little bit, scrunching them up, and they're laughing. Ha ha ha, that's funny. Okay. What about this? Seen that in comics many times, right? Just 2 little vertical lines. Pogo. The comic Pogo uses that sometimes, okay? Classic comic. And let's try something else. How about the linked eyes? Have you ever seen this before? Where the eyes are kind of linked to one another. Sometimes there's a little line right there, not always. Seen that one. Can also do the empty circles. See this a lot in classic stuff, early 20th century. Okay. Very common. And let's try something else. You build in a little highlight for the eye, like that. Make a nice big cute eye. right? This is more sort of Disney, right? Maybe it's some kind of animal character. Right? It's another one. And we could just carry on with this for a long, long time. You like, you know, manga. They're going to have lots of different eyes in manga. Some of them are very intricately designed. You'll have sort of a line at the top, line at the bottom, and then a long iris. A long iris like this. Reflection at the top, reflection at the bottom, and a pupil in the middle. Sometimes you'll get this darker shape out at the edge, like that. Okay? And then more of the same on the other side. This is more sort of like a 3/4 view. Right? So decide, you know, what kind of shape language do you want to use for the eyes? What do you find is more suited to the kind of story you're telling? You know, if you want to go this more sort of realism route, then you have to work out how to do that in a way that is easy for you to reproduce quickly, and in a way that you make sure that you nail those same shapes for the character you're drawing. Or of course, you know how our eyes do change shape a lot depending on our facial expression. So with a comic, if you're keeping it simple by using dots, you can make that happen by adding lines on top and bottom, changing how you draw the eyebrows and things like that. But if you're doing more of sort of a realistic kind of a look, you know, so let's say that I have a character who looks like this. Okay, so here's my character. Now, if I want to change this person's facial expression, all right, I'm gonna move that over, just touch, there we go. If I want to change this person's facial expression, I have to think about what else goes into this person's design, right? So that when I draw that same person again, the reader is going to say, oh, I know who that is. I recognize that person. I know who that character is, okay? So if the neutral sort of facial expression is what I've got here, right? If this is sort of the neutral facial expression, then I have to think, okay, now I'm going to take this person and I'm going to make them sad. The first thing, of course, is to change the eyebrows. The more you get down this path of sort of semi-realism, the more you have to pay attention to things like making sure that the shapes that you draw feel like things that a real human face can do. Okay? So I haven't touched the eyes, but I've adjusted the eyebrows and the corners of the mouth. Okay? And that already gives us a slightly different facial expression, right? If I want to take this person and make them angry, what do? Again, I have to think about eyebrows. I like to start with that. It just makes me, it feels like I can figure that out a little more easily. Still haven't messed with the eyes, okay? I left the eyes the same in all three of these, but by just adjusting the eyebrows and the mouth, basically, I was able to get something that felt like, you know, a different facial expression. Now, of course, people who are much better at this than I am are going to go a lot farther. They're going to start messing with the muscles in the face and getting things to move more, but I just want to show you what you can kind of get away with. And still keep that character recognizable. Now, we haven't even talked about this character's other traits, you know, so I haven't designed any of that. So if I were to have a distinctive hairstyle for this character, that would help, or a distinctive piece of the headgear that they wear. It could be a hat, could be a bandana or something. It could be, you know, something like a certain beret, however you say it, in the hair. Who knows, right? That kind of thing goes a long way, especially if you're drawing them from a distance. So people are like, oh yeah, I see that bun on top of that person's head. I recognize who that is. That's so-and-so. So that helps as well. But I just want to show you what's possible there. Now, what I like is with these simpler ones, you know, you can just really get through it a lot faster, okay? Raise the eyebrows, lower the eyebrows, change the shape of the mouth, but the eye is just a dot and a couple of lines with it, whatever. You're not having to try and keep these proportions, you know, so perfect all the way through. You can kind of stretch and pull. The other thing about doing a more cartoony style, if that's what you want, is of course you can, when I say stretch and pull, you can really go crazy with that kind of stuff. Anybody who's ever seen Ren and Stimpy knows that Stimpy's face is basically silly putty. And Ren's is the same way. I mean, Ren's more so, actually. The general design of Ren, you know, whatever it is, he's a Chihuahua. And, you know, I can't draw Stimpy or Ren from memory, but it's like he's got this sort of face to give him that funny, what is it? Let's see if I can get this right. When his ears are up, like a rabbit almost. All right, that's definitely not him, but you get the idea. They'll do stuff where his face will completely change shape and he'll be like this. Okay, same character. And have the ears down, whatever. I keep making him look like a rabbit, but they'll do stuff like that. It's the same character, but they stretch and pull the face, you know, in an amazing way, and you're still able somehow to recognize it. So that's a pretty amazing thing. So that's another thing you want to decide, is how far you want to go with pushing and pulling a face to make it work for you. So I hope I gave you some good examples of ways to just treat eyes. What I would recommend is looking at comics that you really like and seeing how your favorite comic book artists do draw eyes, and look at that from panel to panel, look at the different facial expressions and how they manage to get different emotions out of those characters, and then how they turn the head and make it so that the character is recognizable. So that's the exercise I talked about earlier, and I think it'd be fun to try that. So we're going to design someone and then try and do a little turnaround. In the meantime, I'll pause just for some questions. Let's see. Do you apply the method, the Loomis method, in your cartoons? Says Yains. I hope I'm saying your name right, Yains. Well, maybe. I mean, I guess parts of it. Now, if those of you who aren't familiar with the Loomis method, you're starting with a circle. You're dropping a line down. get your hairline, and then well, first you get it bisect this circle. Make mine more of a circle there. It's a little taller. There we go. You bisect it, come up and establish a hairline, and then that's the first third from the hairline to the brow ridge. Next third here is for the bottom of the nose. You drop one more third down, and that's for the bottom of the jaw there. You kind of cut off a little bit of the sides of that circle, okay? And then you connect down to the jaw. This is your brow ridge right here. Brow ridge is like if you were to touch on your face, you'll feel where that ocular cavity starts, right at the top of the ocular cavity, the hole in your skull that holds your eyeball, basically. Okay, so you know your eyeballs are directly under it, just kind of sitting there, all happy and cozy, and protected from the rain and the weather and whatnot. And right about here, which should be the top, this should be where your eye line is basically halfway from top to bottom, top of the cranium right here to the bottom of the jaw. And here's that nose. Now this doesn't mean the tip of the nose is there. This is just the bottom of the nose. The tip of the nose might be here. You know, everyone's nose is shaped differently. But that's the bottom area of the nose region, if you will. Okay, like the top of the septum, I guess. And there's our irises. So then you draw the top of the eye there. You come up about halfway between top and bottom of the nose and the jaw, and that line you draw there is like the about halfway, I guess, is basically the lower lip, line of the lower lip, where that shadow is under your lower lip, and then you put the line of the mouth just above that, okay, which is a little more narrow, more or less, than if you were to drop lines straight down from the pupils. And there's that upper lip. Ears fall a little bit between the brow ridge and the bottom of the nose there. Okay, and then there you have your human head. Okay, so get those eyebrows just up and over that brow ridge, and they break right where the side plane of the head turns from the side plane to the front plane. Right, here's our front plane. Okay. This is basically all side plane right here. Side plane. Right? Side plane. Anyway, lots of people like to combine this with there's your keystone, with the Riley proportions of the head, or what do they call it? Rhythms of the head, I guess. Which kind of gives you an idea of more like the planes of the head, you know? So I hope that's helpful. So do I use this method when I'm drawing the characters? I would say in the back of my mind, it's probably always just floating around back there, and it's informing a lot of what I'm doing. Even if I'm doing something that's really cartoony, I'm probably still thinking about stuff like, you know, even if this is my head shape for my cartoon character, and I draw a center line like that, and I say, okay, this is how my character is going to be laid out. This is my eye line, and this is my center line. It's like a 3/4 view. And I'm going to have the nose like right under here. And I'm still thinking a little bit about that kind of stuff, okay? So I could do this kind of eye here. And I'm thinking about bouncing across that center line, right? And maybe just modify that shape slightly. And maybe that's my my character. So that could be informed by me thinking in the back of my mind a little bit about Loomis, and that whole, the basic idea really is just understanding the real proportions of the head, right? And then playing around a little bit with those to get a stylized drawing out of it for comics purposes, right? So I guess it's kind of floating around back there for me, depending on what I'm doing. Hope that answers your question. I'm not using the Doozy inker material, but I am using a sort of variant of it. This is a brush that I created for the Lightbox 2020 conference. It was called Inky Triumph. I just have it up here under a different name because I changed one little tiny part of it, but it's the same brush basically. I just changed the, I wanted to have it build up tone if I just let it sit there on the canvas like that. All right, let's see. Any other questions? You saw a YouTube video about Riley. Yeah, so just watch out for the Riley method because a lot of people do it wrong, and you get a lot of different instruction about how to do it. Same with any of these formulas for drawing. You know, with Riley, it's like unless you really studied under him in the 70s or whatever it was when he was teaching, 70s, 80s, 60s, 70s, 80s. You know, odds are you're going to get sort of a bastardized version of it, which could be useful. Depends on who's doing it. But those rhythms and stuff, there are still ateliers that teach it really well. And yeah, it's definitely not the kind of thing you maybe want to do every time you're drawing because it's so formulaic and it can add a lot of time to what you're trying to accomplish. But there are some people who apply it in a really interesting way. Thinking of Court Jones, for example. Court, C-O-U-R-T, Jones, uses it when he does caricature. He's really good at like pushing and pulling those relationships to figure out how to draw somebody. And there are other people who just, I can't remember their names, but anyway, people do a good job with it. It's worth learning for sure, and just understanding it for planes of the head more than anything else, I think. Which, you know, if you're really interested in that kind of stuff, look up, you know, James Asaro. And I might be getting my dates wrong. When is Frank Riley teaching? I think it was the 70s, but could have been earlier, later, I don't know. The Asaro head is a three-dimensional model you can buy of a head that has the planes of the head that are really good. I think his first name is James Asaro. Okay, so I wanted to do a little turnaround. So what I'm going to come up is we're looking at Halloween now, so I thought it'd be cool. Let's do a little sketch. So I'm going to start with a shape. And let's see. This will be my shape. It's kind of like an amphora of wine. I thought it'd be fun to do like a vampire sort of character, you know? And I'll put the eyes up here. And the nose like about here. And the mouth all the way down here. I want to see what that looks like. I'm just thinking simple shapes are like for the nose. Actually, maybe I want that nose to dip down. Like that. I'm going to give him Let's give him like eyes that are slanted like this, with tiny little irises. And the eyebrows will just be like triangles, like that. I might simplify the nose even more. Let's see. Maybe that shape's better. I like that better for the head shape. And I like the idea of pulling those lines down from the nose down to the corners of the mouth, having them come right out to the edge. Like that. Gonna level him out a bit. And maybe the top of the head needs to be more like that. So that's kind of a fun shape for him, I think. And then maybe he just kind of slopes on down to his shoulders. All right, let's get rid of some of these lines here. There, I like that. With the bridge of the nose kind of going into the folds. Maybe we could even bring the eyebrows all the way in. Let's see how that feels. I like that. Okay, so that's step one. I've got a head, and now I always draw to the I draw to the right, and then I start pulling my other drawings to the left because I'm left-handed. If you're right-handed, you would start to the left and pull to the right because you have to be able to see your reference. You don't want your hand blocking it, okay? So as a lefty, I always draw to the right, start to the right and then move to the left. So this would be a good time for me now to make a new layer and do this. I'm gonna mark off the top of the head, the bottom of the head. Whoops, let's get that a little more accurate. There we go. The eye line there. So it's really kind of like the top of the eye. And then the bottom of the eye right there. The nostrils, and then the point of the nose right there. See, I'm just kind of like these landmarks, right? Corners of the mouth. Okay. And there's that collar. So I can do that, and I can knock that back. So I can still see it, right? And then what I can do is I can, I'm just gonna adjust my microphone here because it's kind of in the way. I can't see what I'm doing. There we go. Hopefully you can still hear me okay. Then I would try, most likely, the next thing I would do is try and do a profile, okay? So let's try that. So from the side, I said, I don't know how far back his head goes. Well, this is the time for me to make these decisions, okay? I know he's got kind of like a pointed head, right? So I want that to come through in the profile too. All right. Now we come down, this is where that eye line is going to be. Okay. And I know that the eyebrows are going to angle upward. All right. This is going to be like the halfway line coming down for the side view. So I'm going to push this forward a bit more. And now the eyes are going to sit back, okay? And the tip of the nose comes to here. So I want to draw it like that. And looking at the eye there, I think what I want to do with the brow is pull the eyebrow in that way. I think that looks better. From the side we have, I didn't mark this off, okay, so I'm just going to look at that. That's the little point of his hair coming down. These are the corners of the mouth, so I want this line to come all the way down to there. And then I'm going to throw that fang in. Let's get that a little further back, like this. Okay. And those little ears. Just coming down like that. Oops, a little longer than that. Have to make that line up, so we're going to drop it down just a bit, like this. There we go. I'm looking at him and I think maybe it's more like his head is more like a block like that. Kind of blocky and then sort of straight down. Just feels better. And we have these big cheekbones out here, so we don't want to miss that detail. So I can draw them in like that maybe and sort of reinforce that shape. And maybe push the hairline back like this. Like I say often with the master classes, I don't know if you can hear my kids playing violin in the background, but this is the time where they practice every day, so you might not be able to hear it, but I'm getting some nice music right now. All right, so here's, now the collar is gonna come forward this way. See how it crosses that line right there? So then I wanna come forward with that. And actually, let's bring that down like this so it's in the same spot and then down. It's important to do this stuff. You really got to figure out how to line it all up. All right, let's hide those little guidelines for a minute. And you can see how we arrive then at this profile view for that character, okay? And the next step, of course, would be, put the lines back, to do a 3/4 view. If you need it, you know, maybe you're gonna keep your comic simple enough to where you can almost get away with just 2 views every time, but you know, that's unlikely. And we haven't gotten into things like what happens when he talks and opens his mouth, and you know, how do you handle that? These are all the kinds of things you have to think about. And you want to go through these exercises and do all of this before you say, okay, I'm ready to go, and then commit to starting to draw, because you don't want to get into a situation where you really like your character design, but there's absolutely no way for you to do a turnaround with them and draw them at different positions and angles, and have it look right? That would be a problem. So just as a fun experiment, you can take this guy and you can try things like that. You can say, what happens if he's, you know, surprised? Or even just this, just do one eye like that and the other one like that. That's funny. Maybe he's talking. So you go from this to that. Now you're starting to get somewhere where you start to figure out how to move the head and move the face. I mean, into different poses, facial expressions, things like that, right? And then hopefully you should get to a point where you start to learn the language well enough that you go, yeah, I understand the basic shapes well enough that I could do something like this. You know, draw him from far away. In my comic, you know, and we see him smaller on a panel interacting with someone else, but we know who we're looking at right there, because we've gone through the trouble of working out this kind of thing. So then we go, yep, that's our guy. I know who he is. Definitely recognize him, right? That's where you want to get to, where you can do stuff like that. And so that's pretty much it. This idea of choosing a style that you can comfortably draw, where you can have different expressions, different facial expressions, where you can draw and simplify it down to something where that language is something you know that you can repeat. That vocab is something you can repeat over and over again. And you want to keep that consistency, right? You want to stay on model, so remember the proportions. Know how high up are the eyes, where is the bottom of the nose. I think this is kind of like a Loomis thing, you know, where do these different features sit? Okay, when you look at the head from top to bottom and from left side to right side, looking at that center view and so on. These are things to keep in mind. And we can do more of this, I think. It's a good thing to do. I have no masterclass next week because next week is Adobe Max. I'm wearing my Adobe Max t-shirt. Hope y'all can see that, you know. And remember, Max is free this year, just like last year, so go register for it. It's not too late. Tons and tons of cool workshops and labs and things like that. I'll be doing a lab on the new features in Adobe Fresco, which are motion and perspective. So check that out. That's Lab 409. In the meantime, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Remember to be kind, have a great weekend, and I'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody. Ciao for now.